episode, I'm going to cover with you some very common reasons for why private practice owners think that they're leading their businesses, but in actual fact, they're still stuck in a kind of operational and a managerial jail. So if this sounds like something you're looking to get some help with, stick around because this is the episode for you. My name is Valerie Ling. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also the director and founder of a 7-figure health practice in Sydney, Australia. In this podcast, we talk about all things private practice leadership to get you from prison to freedom. A really common question, if you look this up and you do a Google search, is what is the difference between leadership and management? And then you'll find some great answers in the internet. When I first started my business, I thought that it was a simple and clear-cut answer. A leader sets the vision and the strategy, and a manager is the operator and the executor of the vision. And there are a bunch of management books and leadership books out there that will spell that out. But here's the thing. By following that simple definition in my mind, for some reason, I was still in some kind of private practice leadership jail. What was the deal? I was doing my annual vision and strategy planning, and I knew the mission, and I had some value statements up on a board in a manual, and yet I was still the go-to person. I remember thinking at one point that I felt like I was the Valeriepedia, meaning that I was the go-to person for a lot of questions in my business. And I couldn't figure out I'd done the right thing. So here's my insights and top tips for you. Number one, let's really get the definitions knotted down. Leadership, management, and operations. Leadership is really all about setting the vision so that you inspire, so that you influence, and so that you imprint on your team. What do I mean by those three things? Let's start with the last one, imprint. Imprinting means that you actually, as a leader, develop and train and have a vision, not only for your clients, but for your team members. Who have you got on the team? What are their gifts? What are their strengths? What are the golden threads within them that you can see that can be developed? And the imprinting is that the more they're in your business under your leadership, the more your culture, your values, and your vision grows and transforms into their gifts and strengths and fabric and material and personhood, if you like. Right? So a leader imprints. They leave a legacy, they leave a development pathway in their teams. Leaders inspire. I often say to the people that I coach, I often say that you need to do your job to inspire, encourage, and motivate. How is the question that you're dealing with, or how is the action that you're taking part of a leadership conversation that inspires? The leadership conversation is also about influence. Influence is not manipulation. Influence is predicated on trust and credibility, and the fact that you show up, and the fact that you are interested in how your team are growing. You're interested in what their thoughts are, and so it provides you the mechanism and the pathway to influence. And the leadership conversation basically moves people from scenario 1 to scenario 2. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next section. But here's the thing to remember. Leadership is about influence, willingly giving, and for your team to get to the point where they willingly receive your influence. So they shift, they develop, and they move from scenario 1 to scenario 2. A management conversation is all about the midline view. In a leadership conversation, you've got the top line view. You're looking to see what impact you're going to be making through your business. Management conversations have a midline view. They take that top line view and deal with the issues of, well, how do we operationalize that? How do we actually make that happen? And so management conversations have got to do with budget conversations. How much can we spend? How much are we allocating to these expenses? They're about operational outcomes. How do we get the machines to do what they need to do? How do we get the rooms and the rosters to be working so that they're actually producing operational outcomes? And they're also the types of conversations that we have around resourcing for efficiency. How many more computers do we need? Why isn't the printer working? How do we actually get our technology to talk with the bits and bobs of hardware and software in our business? Those are management conversations. Management basically is about exercising control, watching over outcomes, and making things work. The management conversation takes its direction from the leadership conversation, which says we need to get from scenario 1 to scenario 2. The management conversation says, how do I make that journey happen with the resources and the operational functions that we have? Finally, the operational conversation. Now, the operational conversation is about how do we do it? What do we actually do, right? It's the doing piece of it. And so operational conversations are really about where do we do it, with what do we do it, and how do we do it. Point number 1 that I wanted to make is there is a clear difference between leadership, management, and operational conversations. The next point that I want to bring before you is that as clinical health people, we're actually trained to be operational and to be excellent in the operational. It's a little bit like asking someone who's right-handed to now swap over to be left-handed. It's uncomfortable and it makes you feel, and so you're going to want to swap back to your dominant hand. And when we are clinicians, that's what it feels like when we're moving out of operations, out of management, and into leadership, because all of our metrics for success and performance and quality comes from us actually doing. So what do I mean by that? When you have a client or when you have a patient in front of you, you listen to what they say, you formulate what seems to be going on, you diagnose the situation or the issue, and then you form a treatment plan. And in the doing, the one-on-one interfacing with your client or patient, you're getting plenty of data and feedback so you can refine that process. Now, what we tend to do then as leaders is we take that operational excellence process and then think that now we're just going to swap the client, and so that the new client is our team. What happens then? When you swap your new client as the team, you're going to be highly operational. If your team are struggling with not having enough resources, you're going to want to diagnose and formulate and fix the problem because you have a new client. And so you're going to probably get in there and figure out and touch the printer or touch the computer and let them know that's okay, we'll work it out together. So you've actually got a new client, and now you're going to be operational in your business. You just swapped clients. So the reason why it's really hard for clinicians to see the difference is because we've been trained to provide a service. We've been trained to have a client mindset. And if we're not careful, we basically swap out our clients from our clinical clients to our team. That's the second point. And the second reason why it's really important to figure out what is the leadership conversation, which takes me to my final point. What is the leadership conversation? The leadership conversation always has to be influence, imprinting, and it has to be about inspiring. I'm going to give you a really it is a true example of how an operational issue really was a leadership issue. When I first started my private practice about 10 years ago, we were in a single room and I had about 2 or 3 subcontractors and someone who was renting the room with us. And we just circulated in that one room through the whole week, just being rusted on who was coming and going. And we were also sharing the premises with someone else. And so we were allocated our room as a tenant. Now, there was a pantry, and we were using our cups and our dishes and our cutlery and things like that. And it came to the point where we had to ask the question, who washes the dishes? That's an operational question, but it actually has a leadership conversation attached to it. When you're the leader of your team and the leader in your business, it's really helpful to put a pause on a request or a question and float up and ask, what is the leadership conversation around this? The leadership conversation around that is the principle of we were tenants. So we actually want to be hospitable and respectful and generous to the people who are hosting us. So therefore, the values that we have in our business, respect, generosity, and professionalism, really form part of the leadership conversation, even in something as operational as who's going to wash the dishes. So what's the principle there? What are the behaviors that we want to see out of that? Well, we actually want to see professionals who are able to wash their own dishes because they're respectful that the landlord's not there to do it. Your other teammates aren't there to do it. It's your cup. And so to be respectful, to be generous, and to be professional in that setting means we wash our own dishes and our cups. Now, if I was a leader that was having an operational question or an operational conversation at that point in time, I may have said, don't worry, guys, you go home, I'll do the dishes. If I was having a managerial conversation about that, I might be looking at the resources and the budget and going, okay, how much money do we have to actually have someone and do the washing up and maybe some other things 3 hours, at a time so that we've got admin support. But having the leadership conversation, I was able to forecast and say, what do I want my organization to look like in the future? What do I want my team to look like in the future? Why are these values important? What will our clients experience of our team as a result? And the leadership conversation that even way back then, when we were a single room, subcontractor float in, float out model was that generosity, professionalism, and respect are values that we have. And so one team, we're not admin, we're not clinicians. We are one team, we serve one another. And when there are dishes to be washed, we wash them. Now, fast forward to 10 years later, and we're a team of almost 20, and there are a lot more cups and dishes, and we actually have 2 suites. That leadership value still guides us. We are one team, we serve one another, and it's one of the basis of the tasks that we job trial new team members into. We say we are one team. When there are dishes to be washed, we wash them. Now, that doesn't mean that from an operational and managerial perspective, we've taken a broader view. We now know that from a managerial and operational point of view, it's far more efficient if we actually have 1 or 2 people rostered on to wash the dishes at the end of the day. That doesn't mean that we've dispensed with that. We've certainly got that now, because if you look at a managerial issue for efficiency, it's just much more efficient if someone takes charge of that. But do you know, it really helps our team to know the value, the leadership conversation, even in that task, to remember we are one team. If our practice manager is sick and they're off, if our admin team are sick and they're off, we're one team. We can wash the dishes. We can pull through together. Even as a leader, I like to get in there every now and again and to actually wash the dishes as well. The leadership conversation in there is, how's my team doing? Does this system still work? Are they struggling now that we're a bigger team? Is it too much for one person? I like to still get in there and be operational, but it isn't my main job. It isn't my main role. It still comes with a leadership focus. If you've really resonated with this episode, you would really love the download that I've got prepared for you. It points to 5 leadership freedom keys that I've discovered that where I was really just stuck in reading books and listening to people and thinking that that's the best way to put it into a health leadership framework. And these 5 things that I discovered that I needed to rethink, redo, and just recast how I was looking at things really set me on the path of private practice leadership freedom. If you've liked what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified for when the next episode drops.